The stagecoach rattled into Veta, Colorado territory on a blistering August afternoon in 1878, carrying a woman whose heart beat faster with every turn of the wheels, knowing her life was about to change forever in ways she could only begin to imagine. Clara Hartley pressed her gloved hand against the dusty window, peering through the grime at the rough-hewn buildings lining the single main street of this mountain town. Behind her, the Spanish peaks rose like sentinels guarding secrets she did not yet know. Her other hand rested on her left thigh, where the old injury throbbed with each jolt of the coach. 3 days of relentless travel from Denver had taken their toll, and she wondered what the man waiting for her would think when he saw her step down with her uneven gait. The advertisement had been simple enough. Rancher seeking companionship and partnership. Hard worker, honest man looking for same in a wife, must be willing to embrace frontier life. She had responded with equal simplicity, mentioning her seamstress skills, her love of reading, her capability in a kitchen. She had not mentioned the childhood accident that left her with a shortened left leg and a permanent limp. Shame had kept the words from the page, though she knew deception was no foundation for a marriage, even one born of practical necessity rather than romance. The coach lurched to a stop outside the Wells Fargo office, and Clara took a steadying breath. The driver's weathered face appeared at the window. "This is Veta, miss. End of the line for today." She nodded, gathering her worn carpet bag and the small trunk that contained everything she owned in this world. When the door swung open, she accepted the driver's hand and stepped down carefully, her left foot finding purchase before she brought her right down to meet it. The slight hitch in her movement was unmistakable. The street was busy with afternoon commerce. Miners, ranchers, and townspeople moved about their business, and she felt the weight of curious stares. A woman alone always drew attention, but a woman with a limp seemed to draw even more. "Miss Hartley," the voice came from behind her, deep and uncertain. Clara turned, her hand still gripping the coach door for balance, and found herself looking at a man who stood a full head taller than her own 5 feet 4 inches. He had sun-darkened skin, hair the color of prairie wheat, and eyes that seemed to shift between blue and gray depending on how the light caught them. His hat was in his hands, worrying the brim with work-roughened fingers. "I am Clara Hartley," she said, lifting her chin despite the fear coursing through her veins. "You must be Yates Zimmerman." "Yes, madam." He glanced down at her feet, then quickly back up to her face. She saw the question forming in his eyes, saw the moment of confusion, then something else. Something she could not quite name. "Welcome to Veta. I hope the journey was not too difficult." "It was long," she admitted, "but I am grateful to have arrived safely." An awkward silence stretched between them. The driver hauled her trunk down with a thud that made them both jump. Yates moved forward quickly, hoisting the trunk onto his broad shoulder as though it weighed nothing. "My wagon is just there," he said, nodding toward a sturdy buckboard hitched to 2 bay horses. "I thought we could stop by the hotel, let you rest and freshen up before heading out to the ranch." "That would be kind, thank you." She gathered her skirts and took a step. Her left leg buckled slightly, and she caught herself with practiced ease, but not before Yates noticed. He moved as if to help, then stopped himself, uncertain. The moment crystallized between them, awkward and painful. "I should have told you," Clara said quietly, meeting his eyes directly. "In my letters I should have mentioned that I walk with a limp. I had an accident when I was 7. A wagon wheel rolled over my leg. It healed, but not quite right. I can walk and work and do everything that needs doing, but not quickly, and not without this." She gestured to her leg, her cheeks burning with embarrassment and the defiance of someone who had explained herself too many times. Yates was quiet for a long moment, and Clara braced herself for rejection. It would not be the first time. The young man back in Ohio had promised her the moon and stars, right up until he saw her struggle through a muddy street. Then the promises had dried up like summer rain. "Miss Hartley," Yates finally said, his voice measured and thoughtful, "I reckon we all carry something. Some things just show more than others." He paused, then added with the ghost of a smile, "We'll walk through life together at whatever pace suits us both. Now, let me help you to the wagon if you will allow it. Not because you cannot manage, but because I would offer the same courtesy to anyone after 3 days on that torture box they call a stagecoach." Something in Clara's chest loosened, a knot she had not realized she had been carrying. She nodded and accepted his offered arm. His strength was evident but not overwhelming, and he adjusted his stride to match hers without making a show of it. The wagon ride to the hotel took mere minutes through the dusty streets. La Veta was smaller than Clara had imagined, but it had a certain charm. The buildings were mostly wood, some with false fronts that proclaimed grander aspirations. Mountains loomed in every direction, creating a bowl of protection around the little town. "How long have you been here?" she asked, needing to fill the silence with something other than her racing thoughts. 5 years come September. Bought the ranch from a man heading back east after his wife died. Could not stand the loneliness, he said. Yates glanced at her. I understood that. Ranch life can be isolating, especially in winter. That is partly why I placed the advertisement. Only partly. A faint color rose in his tan cheeks. I am 32 years old, Miss Hartley. I have built something solid out here, but a ranch needs more than one pair of hands to truly thrive. And a house needs more than one person to be a home. His honesty touched her. I am 24, she offered in return. Old enough that my aunt in Ohio considered me a burden. She made it clear that her hospitality had limits, especially after my uncle died last year. The choices were limited for a woman in my position. Their loss is my gain, then, Yates said simply. The hotel was called the Spanish Peaks Lodge, a 2-story structure with a wide porch and curtained windows. Yates helped her down and carried her trunk inside, where a motherly woman with graying hair greeted them. Mrs. Fletcher, this is Miss Clara Hartley, my intended. She will be needing a room for tonight, and perhaps you could arrange a bath, Mrs. Fletcher's eyes went from Clara to Yates and back again, and something in her expression softened. Of course, Mr. Zimmerman. I will have water heating right away. You come with me, dear. Let us get you settled. Clara followed the older woman up a narrow staircase, acutely aware of how her footsteps echoed unevenly on the wooden steps. The room Mrs. Fletcher showed her to was small but clean, with a window overlooking the street and a bed that looked infinitely more comfortable than the stagecoach seat. He is a good man, that Yates Zimmerman, Mrs. Fletcher said, setting a fresh pitcher of water on the washstand. Known him since he came to town. Works hard, treats folks fair, goes to church most Sundays. You could do worse. I know little about him beyond his letters, Clara admitted. Well, you will have time to learn. Marriage is a long conversation, my mother used to say. Mrs. Fletcher paused at the door. And do not you worry about anything else. Yates is not the kind to judge a person for things beyond their control. His own father was injured in the war, came back walking with a cane. He knows what it means to push through difficulty. The words comforted Clara more than she wanted to admit. After Mrs. Fletcher left, she sank onto the bed and allowed herself a moment of weakness. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had not traveled all this way to dissolve into self-pity. The bath arrived an hour later, carried up in buckets by a young boy who tried not to stare at her but failed. Clara soaked away the dust and weariness, scrubbed her dark hair clean, and dressed in her best remaining dress, a dark blue calico that had seen better days but was at least presentable. She brushed out her hair and pinned it up carefully, studying herself in the small mirror above the washstand. She had her mother's dark eyes and sharp cheekbones, features that had once been called handsome if not beautiful. The journey west had left her thinner than she liked, and worry had etched faint lines around her mouth, but she held herself with dignity. That, at least, no accident could take away. A knock at the door announced Yates's return. The sun had begun its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He had cleaned up as well, she noticed, his hair damp and combed back, his shirt fresh. "I thought we might have supper at the cafe down the street," he said. "Give us a chance to talk properly before you have to decide anything final." "Decide?" Clara tilted her head. "Whether you want to go through with the marriage," Yates said bluntly. "I know I am not what you might have imagined, and you have had a long journey to discover that. The preacher can marry us tomorrow morning if you are willing, but if you need time, or if you want to go back to Denver or even back east, I will pay for your passage. No hard feelings." The offer surprised her into silence for a moment. She had expected many things, but not this kind of honest escape route. "And if I choose to stay?" she asked. "Then we build a life together. Simple as that." Clara picked up her shawl and wrapped it around her shoulders. "Let us have supper, Mr. Zimmerman. I find I'm quite hungry, and decisions are best made on a full stomach." His smile was quick and genuine, transforming his serious face into something warmer. "I could not agree more." They walked to the cafe, a small establishment run by a Mexican family that filled the evening air with the scent of chilies and roasting meat. Inside, lanterns cast a warm glow over mismatched tables and chairs. They chose a table near the window, and a young woman brought them coffee without asking, strong and hot and exactly what Clara needed. "Tell me about your ranch," Clara said, wrapping her hands around the cup. Yates leaned back in his chair, his long legs stretched out under the table. "It is about 6 miles north of town, up in the foothills. 200 acres of decent grazing land and timber. I run about 50 head of cattle right now, some horses. Got a house that is solid if not fancy. 2 bedrooms, a good kitchen, a porch that looks out toward the mountains. Creek runs through the property year-round. In summer, it is about as pretty as anything you have ever seen. And in winter, cold," he admitted. "Snow can pile up past the windows, but the house is tight and the stove is good. I put up enough wood each year to see us through. We would not go hungry or freeze if that is what worries you." The food arrived, plates of beef and beans and fresh tortillas, and they ate in companionable silence for a while. Clara found her appetite had returned with a vengeance, and the food was better than anything she had eaten in weeks. "What do you want from a wife, truly?" she asked when the plates were cleared away. "Your advertisement mentioned companionship and partnership, but what does that mean to you?" Yates considered the question, turning his coffee cup in his hands. "I want someone to share the work and the rewards. Someone to talk to at the end of the day. Someone who will build something with me instead of just watching me build it. I do not expect love, not right away. That is something that grows or it does not, but I hope for respect and honesty and effort from both sides." "Those things I can promise," Clara said. "I am a hard worker, Mr. Zimmerman. My limp does not prevent me from cooking or sewing or tending a garden. I may not be able to help with heavy ranch work, but I can manage a household, keep accounts, and I am quick to learn new skills. I believe you." He met her eyes directly. "But I want you to know that I am not looking for a servant or a housekeeper I have to marry to keep respectable. I am looking for a partner, someone whose opinion matters, someone who has a say in how we live and what we do." The words were so different from what Clara had expected that she felt tears threaten again. She blinked them back and nodded. Then I think we may suit each other well, Mr. Zimmerman. Yates, he corrected gently. If we are going to be married, you should call me Yates. Clara, she offered in return. They walked back to the hotel as full darkness settled over Veta. The air had cooled considerably and Clara pulled her shawl tighter. At the hotel steps, Yates paused. The preacher holds services at the schoolhouse on Sunday mornings, but he will marry us any day we like. What would suit you? Clara thought of the lonely room upstairs, of the long uncertainty stretching before her if she delayed. She thought of Yates's steady kindness and his unexpected offer to walk through life together at whatever pace suited them both. Tomorrow, she said, if that gives you enough time to arrange things. His smile was slow and warm. Tomorrow it is. I will be here at 10 o'clock. Sleep well, Clara. She watched him walk to his wagon, his stride long and confident, and wondered what she had just committed herself to. But underneath, the nervousness was something else, something that felt almost like hope. That night, sleep came easier than expected. She dreamed of mountains and open sky, and a house she had never seen but somehow already knew. Morning broke clear and bright, the kind of day that seemed designed for new beginnings. Clara dressed in her best dress, a gray silk she had been saving, and pinned her mother's brooch at her throat. Her hands shook only slightly as she arranged her hair. Mrs. Fletcher knocked at 8 with a tray of breakfast and a motherly smile. "Eat, dear. You will need your strength for the day ahead." She paused, then added, "I brought you these," and produced a small bouquet of wildflowers, purple and yellow and white. Every bride should have flowers. The kindness of this near stranger nearly undid Clara's composure. "Thank you," she managed. "We women have to look out for each other, Mrs." Fletcher said matter-of-factly, "Especially out here where life can be hard. You need anything, you come find me, you hear?" Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. At 10 o'clock exactly, Yates appeared at the hotel entrance. He wore a black suit that had seen better days but was clean and pressed, and he carried his hat in his hands. His hair was slicked back with water, and he looked both hopeful and nervous. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the honesty in his voice made Clara believe him. They walked together to the schoolhouse at the edge of town. The preacher, a thin man named Reverend Mitchell with kind eyes and a booming voice, was waiting with Mrs. Fletcher and her husband as witnesses. The ceremony was brief but sincere, the words weighing more heavily than Clara had anticipated. When Reverend Mitchell said, "You may kiss your bride," Yates hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a chaste kiss to Clara's cheek. His lips were warm and his beard tickled slightly, and Clara felt color rise in her face. "Welcome to married life," the Reverend said, shaking Yates's hand and then Clara's. "May God bless your union and grant you many happy years together." They signed the register, Clara writing her new name for the first time, Clara Zimmerman. It looked strange on the page but not unpleasant. Outside, Yates helped her into the wagon, now loaded with her trunk and several crates of supplies from the general store. "Thought we would stock up while we were in town," he explained. "Save a trip later." The ride to the ranch took them out of Veta and up into the foothills along a winding dirt road. The landscape was breathtaking, all golden grasses and dark pines with the mountains rising behind them. Clara had never seen anything like it. Ohio had been flat and settled, but this was wild and open and somehow more honest. "That is the Cachara's River," Yates said, pointing to a ribbon of water visible below them. "It feeds the creeks, including the one on our land." "Our land," Clara repeated softly, testing the words. Yates glanced at her and smiled. "Our land, our ranch, our life." The house appeared around a bend in the road, nestled in a small valley with hills rising behind it. It was exactly as Yates had described. A solid log structure with a covered porch, 2 windows in front, and a stone chimney rising from the roof. A barn stood nearby, along with a chicken coop and several smaller outbuildings. The creek Yates had mentioned rang clear and quick through the property, bordered by cottonwood trees. "It is beautiful," Clara breathed, and meant it. Yates pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house and helped her down. "Let me show you around before we bring things in." The house was simple but well built. The main room served as kitchen and living area, with a cast iron stove, a sturdy table and chairs, and a rocking chair near the stone fireplace. Curtains hung at the windows, somewhat faded but clean. One bedroom opened off the main room, and Yates gestured to it awkwardly. "That is the main bedroom. There is another smaller room through there," he indicated a door on the opposite wall, "that I have been using. I thought you might want the bigger room, at least until we decide how things will be." Clara understood what he was not saying. He was giving her space, not pushing for the intimacies of marriage until she was ready. The consideration touched her deeply. "That is very thoughtful," she said quietly. They spent the rest of the afternoon unloading the wagon and settling Clara's belongings. She hung her few dresses in the wardrobe, placed her mother's picture on the dresser, and arranged her books on a shelf Yates cleared for her. The house began to feel less strange with each small addition of her things. Yates showed her the barn, where 2 riding horses and a milk cow greeted them with curious eyes. The chickens scratched in their yard, and Yates explained the evening routine of checking for eggs and securing the coop against predators. "Coyotes and foxes mostly," he said. "Sometimes a mountain lion, but they usually stay higher up." For supper, Clara insisted on cooking despite Yates's protests that she should rest. She made a simple meal of fried salt pork, beans, and cornbread from the supplies they had brought, and they ate at the table as the sun set beyond the windows. "This is good," Yates said, sopping up bean juice with his cornbread. "Better than anything I have made in months." "It is nothing fancy," Clara demurred. "It is a meal shared with someone else," Yates said. "That makes it fancy enough." After supper, they sat on the porch as darkness gathered and stars began to appear overhead. The air was cool and pine-scented, and night sounds filled the silence. Crickets, the distant call of an owl, the soft murmur of the creek. "Are you frightened?" Yates asked quietly. Clara considered the question. "A little," she admitted. "Everything is so new and different, but not in a bad way." "I am nervous too," he confessed. "I keep thinking I will do something wrong or say something foolish." "You have been nothing but kind," Clara assured him. "That matters more than you might think." They sat in companionable quiet until the chill drove them inside. Yates banked the fire and lit a lamp, and they stood awkwardly in the main room, neither quite sure how to navigate this first night. "I will say good night then," Yates finally said. "If you need anything, just call out." "Good night, Yates, and thank you for everything." In her room, Clara changed into her nightgown and lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the sounds of the house settling around her. She heard Yates moving in the other room, the creak of his bed as he lay down. She had been so afraid of this day for so long, but now that it had come, she felt oddly peaceful. She had married a stranger, yes, but a good one. The rest would come in time, or it would not, but at least she had a chance here. A real chance at a life of her own making. The days that followed took on a rhythm. Clara rose early and made breakfast while Yates did the morning chores. They ate together. Then Yates would head out to work the ranch while Clara tackled the house. She cleaned thoroughly, learning where everything was kept and how Yates had organized his bachelor existence. She made bread, tended the garden that had been planted but neglected, collected eggs, and slowly made the house feel like a home. Her limp made some tasks more difficult, but she adapted. She learned to brace herself against the counter when kneading bread, to sit while peeling vegetables, to take her time with tasks that required moving between areas. Yates never commented on her adaptations, but she noticed he arranged things to make her work easier. Moving the water bucket closer to the stove, building a small stool for her to use at the counter, fixing a loose board on the porch that had caused her to stumble. They talked more each day, sharing meals and evening hours on the porch. Clara learned that Yates had come west after his father died, seeking a fresh start away from the Pennsylvania farm where he had grown up. He had worked as a ranch hand for 2 years before buying his own land, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and surviving in this harsh but beautiful country. "I love it here," he told her one evening as they watched the sunset paint the mountains. "Every season has its challenges, but there is a freedom in this land that I never felt back east, like you can breathe deeper here." Clara understood what he meant. Despite the hard work and isolation, she felt more herself here than she had in years. No pitying looks from neighbors who had known her since childhood, no whispered conversations about poor Clara and her unfortunate accident. Here, she was just Clara, a woman building a life. 3 weeks into their marriage, a summer storm rolled through the mountains. Clara had never experienced anything like it. Lightning split the sky, thunder shook the house, and rain hammered the roof like bullets. She stood at the window, mesmerized and a little frightened by the raw power of it. Yates came in from securing the barn, soaked to the skin. "Gets dramatic up here," he said, stripping off his wet shirt unselfconsciously. Clara tried not to stare at his broad chest and the muscles built by years of hard labor, but her eyes had a mind of their own. He noticed her looking and froze, then grabbed a dry shirt from the hook by the door. "Sorry, not proper. We are married," Clara reminded him, her cheeks burning. "We are," he agreed, his voice rough. "But I am trying to be patient. Let things develop naturally." The words hung between them, full of unspoken tension. Clara realized with a start that she had been thinking about him more and more in recent days. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentleness of his hands when he helped her over rough ground, the sound of his laugh, rare but genuine when it came. "I appreciate your patience," she said softly, "but I do not require you to be a saint, Yates." His eyes met hers, dark and intense in the lamplight. "I want you to be sure. I want this to be real, not just obligation." "It is becoming real," Clara whispered, surprised by her own boldness. He crossed the room in 3 strides and cupped her face in his hands, his palms rough and warm. "Is it?" "Yes." He kissed her then, not chastely like at their wedding, but with real passion, real want. Clara's hands found his shoulders, still damp from the rain, and she kissed him back with all the confused feelings that had been building inside her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "I have been wanting to do that for weeks," he admitted. "I am glad you finally did." That night, the separate bedrooms became unnecessary. Yates was gentle and patient, mindful of her leg and her inexperience, and Clara discovered that the physical intimacy she had feared could be sweet and even joyful with the right person. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, she felt truly married for the first time. "No regrets?" Yates asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "None. You, not a single one." He kissed the top of her head. "I think I am falling in love with you, Clara Zimmerman." Her heart swelled. "I think I am falling in love with you too." The growing season moved into harvest time, and Clara proved her worth in ways beyond cooking and cleaning. She had a good head for numbers, and began keeping the ranch accounts. organizing Yates's haphazard record, keeping into neat columns that showed exactly where they stood financially. She tended the garden and put up vegetables for winter, filling the root cellar with jars of beans, tomatoes, and pickles. She made butter and cheese from the cow's milk, selling the extra in town for a tidy profit. Yates took her to Veta every few weeks for supplies and church, and Clara began to make friends among the other ranch wives. Mrs. Fletcher had been right about the community of women. They welcomed Clara without judgment, sharing recipes and advice and the occasional afternoon of sewing and gossip. One such afternoon in October, Clara sat with 3 other women in Mrs. Fletcher's parlor, working on a quilt for a young bride-to-be. The conversation had turned to husbands, as it often did. "Men are strange creatures," said Sarah Morrison, a rancher's wife with 4 children. "My Tom can track a stray calf for miles, but he cannot find his own socks in the drawer I have been putting them in for 10 years. The women laughed, and Clara felt a warmth in her chest. This was belonging, this easy camaraderie of shared experience. "How are you settling in, Clara?" asked young Betsy Chen, whose husband ran the livery stable. "We were all so curious when Yates brought home a mail-order bride." "Betsy," Mrs. Fletcher scolded, but gently Clara smiled. "It is all right. I was curious about him too, but I have been fortunate. Yates is a good man." "He looks at you like you hung the moon," Sarah observed. "I saw you two at church last Sunday. The way he helped you over that rough patch of ground, so natural-like. That is love, that is." Clara ducked her head, pleased and embarrassed. Was it so obvious to everyone? But yes, it was love. What had started as a practical arrangement had blossomed into something real and deep. She loved Yates's steadiness, his quiet strength, his unexpected humor. She loved the way he listened when she talked, really listened, and considered her opinions. She loved waking up beside him and falling asleep in his arms and building a life together one day at a time. Winter came hard and early that year. By November, snow blanketed the mountains and made the trip to town treacherous. They settled into a hibernation of sorts, the outside world reduced to the necessary care of animals and the warm cocoon of the house. Clara learned to card and spin wool, creating yarn for knitting. She made Yates thick socks and a warm muffler, and he wore them with obvious pride. He spent the long evenings carving wood, his skilled hands creating beautiful and useful objects. A new bread bowl for Clara, decorative trim for the shelves, toys that he said were just for practice, but that she suspected were intended for future children. They read aloud to each other, alternating evenings. Clara had brought a copy of David Copperfield, and Yates had a collection of frontier tales that he admitted he had read multiple times but never tired of. They played checkers and cards and talked endlessly about everything and nothing. "Tell me about your childhood," Yates said one evening as they sat by the fire, snow falling thick outside the windows. Clara hesitated, then began to speak of her early years before the accident, when she had been carefree and quick. She told him about the wagon that had rolled over her leg, the long recovery, the way everything had changed after. She spoke of her parents' death from fever when she was 16, of living with her aunt and uncle and feeling like an unwanted burden. "I felt broken for so long," she admitted. "Like I was less than whole because of this." She touched her left leg. Yates reached over and took her hand. "You are whole, Clara. You are strong and capable and beautiful. Your limp is just part of you, like my too big nose or my habit of snoring." "You do not snore," Clara protested, then laughed. "Much," he grinned. "See, we all have our flaws, but they do not define us. What defines us is how we face the world despite them." His words settled something in Clara that had been unsettled for most of her life. She leaned over and kissed him, tasting coffee and contentment. That winter, Clara discovered she was pregnant. The realization came gradually, then all at once. The missed monthly courses, the morning nausea, the strange tiredness that no amount of sleep seemed to cure. She stood in the kitchen one January morning, hand pressed to her still flat stomach, and felt a mixture of joy and terror. She waited until that evening to tell Yates. They had finished supper and were sitting by the fire, and Clara found she could not wait any longer. "Yates, I have news." He looked up from the piece of wood he was sanding, his expression curious. "What kind of news? The good kind, I hope. I am going to have a baby. We are going to have a baby." The piece of wood fell from his hands. For a long moment he just stared at her, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally pure joy. Then he was across the room, pulling her into his arms. "Truly, you are certain, as I can be. I think it will come in late summer." He held her at arm's length, his eyes shining. "A baby, our baby." Then his expression shifted to concern. "Are you well? Is there anything you need? Should we call for the doctor?" Clara laughed, her own tears starting to fall. "I am well. Women have babies all the time. But yes, we will want the doctor when the time comes, or at least the midwife. Mrs. Fletcher mentioned there is a good one in town." That night, they lay in bed talking about the future. Names were debated and discarded. Plans were made for adding onto the house. Yates placed his hand on Clara's stomach with such tenderness that she cried again, overwhelmed by how much her life had changed in less than a year. "I was so scared on that stage, Coach," she admitted. "I thought you would take one look at me and send me back." "Best thing that ever got off that stage," Yates said firmly. "You and me, Clara, we are good together, and now we are going to be a family." The winter finally broke in March, and with the spring thaw came new life everywhere. Calves were born in the pasture, and Clara's pregnancy became visible to everyone. The ranch wives rallied around her, sharing advice and making baby clothes and promising to be there when her time came. Yates became almost comically protective, insisting she rest more and work less. Clara tolerated it with good humor, knowing it came from love. She did slow down some, her changing body making some tasks more difficult, but she refused to be an invalid. "I am having a baby, not dying of consumption," she told him when he tried to stop her from hanging laundry. "I know, but still. Let me help." They compromised, working together on most tasks, and Clara found she loved these domestic moments as much as any passionate encounter. There was intimacy in folding sheets together, in Yates's hands covering hers as they kneaded bread, in the simple routines of shared life. In June, they made the trip to Veta for supplies and church. Clara was quite round now, and walking was more difficult than usual, her balance thrown off by her belly and her leg aching more than normal. Yates helped her from the wagon with extra care, and several townspeople called out congratulations. After church, a young man approached them looking nervous. He was rail thin, probably not yet 20, with a scarred face and anxious eyes. "Mr. Zimmerman, I heard you might be looking for extra help come haying season." Yates studied him. "Might be, you have ranch experience." "Some, sir. I worked for the Johnson outfit until they sold out last month. I am a hard worker, I promise. I just need a chance." "What is your name?" "Billy Harper, sir." Yates glanced at Clara, who gave a small nod. She trusted his judgment. "Tell you what, Billy, come out to the ranch tomorrow morning. We will give you a trial week, see how it works out. Pay is fair, and you can sleep in the barn loft until we see if this is a good fit." Billy's face lit up. "Thank you, sir. You will not regret it, I swear." True to his word, Billy appeared the next morning and proved himself willing and capable. He was quiet but not sullen, hard-working but not obsequious. Yates set him to repairing fences and clearing brush, and Billy tackled the work with determination. Clara took to leaving meals out for him, and over time, he began to join them for supper. His story came out gradually. Orphaned young, passed between reluctant relatives, finally striking out on his own at 16. The scars on his face were from a barn fire where he had rescued horses, and Clara's heart ached for this young man who had seen so much hardship. "You have a place here as long as you want it," Yates told him one evening in July. "You are good with the animals and you do not shirk the hard work. That is all I ask." Billy's eyes grew suspiciously bright. "I appreciate that more than I can say, Mr. Zimmerman." Yates, just Yates. As summer deepened and Clara's time grew near, the house seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Yates had converted the small second bedroom into a nursery, building a beautiful cradle from pine and cedar. Clara had sewn tiny gowns and blankets, her hands working even as her belly made it hard to reach her sewing. In late August, on a hot afternoon when the cicadas sang their endless song, Clara's labor began. Yates rode hard for town to fetch the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, who had delivered half the babies in Huefano County. Billy stayed behind, pacing nervously outside the house, clearly terrified by the sounds coming from within. The labor was long and hard, lasting through the night and into the next day. Clara walked the floor when she could, leaning on Mrs. Rodriguez and then Yates when he returned. The pain was tremendous, but she gritted her teeth and bore it, thinking of the baby waiting to be born. "You are doing wonderfully," Mrs. Rodriguez encouraged. "Not much longer now." Finally, as the sun began its descent on the second day, Clara felt an overwhelming urge to push. Mrs. Rodriguez guided her through it, and Yates held her hand so tightly she thought her bones might break. With a final tremendous effort, the baby slid into the world, and a lusty cry filled the room. "A son," Mrs. Rodriguez announced, placing the squalling infant on Clara's chest. "A big, healthy son." Clara looked down at the red, wrinkled face and felt love crash over her like a wave. Yates was crying unashamedly, his hand gently touching the baby's head. "He is perfect," Yates whispered. "Clara, he is perfect." They named him Daniel after Yates's father. Daniel Zimmerman came into the world strong and vocal, and he kept them busy from the first day. Clara recovered slowly from the birth, her body exhausted but triumphant. Yates was a devoted father, walking the floor with Daniel at night when he fussed, changing his nappies without complaint, staring at him with constant wonder. "I cannot believe he is ours," Yates said one evening as they watched the baby sleep in his cradle. "That we made something so perfect." Clara smiled, her heart full. "We did do rather well." The first year of Daniel's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and precious moments. He grew quickly, a robust child with his father's blue eyes and his mother's dark hair. He smiled early and laughed often, and Clara could not imagine life without him. Billy proved invaluable during this time, taking on extra work so Yates could spend more time helping with the baby. He seemed to blossom under the stability of regular work and a place to belong, and Clara began to think of him as something like a younger brother. When Daniel was 6 months old and winter had settled in again, Clara and Yates lay in bed one night discussing the future. "I want more children," Clara said, watching the moonlight play across the ceiling, "if we are blessed with them." "I do too," Yates agreed, "but there is no rush. Let us enjoy Daniel first." "I never thought I would have this," Clara admitted. "A husband who loves me, a child, a home. There were times in Ohio when I thought I would die an old maid, alone and unwanted." Yates pulled her closer. "You are wanted, Clara, by me, every day for the rest of my life. I thank God for that stagecoach that brought you here." "We will walk through life together," Clara quoted softly, remembering his words from that first day. "Every step," Yates confirmed, at whatever pace suits us. The years rolled on, each bringing its own joys and challenges. Daniel grew into a sturdy boy who followed his father everywhere, mimicking his walk and his gestures. When he was 2, Clara gave birth to twin girls, Emma and Grace, who looked so much alike that even their parents sometimes confused them. The house rang with children's laughter and the chaos of a growing family. Billy stayed on, becoming less a hired hand and more a member of the family. He built his own small cabin on the property and talked sometimes of finding a wife. But he seemed content with his bachelor life and his role as beloved uncle to the Zimmerman children. The ranch prospered under Yates's careful management and Clara's sharp business sense. They added more land, more cattle, and eventually hired additional help as the operation grew. But they never lost sight of what mattered: each other and the family they had built together. When Daniel was 5 and the twins were 3, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the others, and she spent much of it resting per the doctor's orders. Yates fretted constantly, but Clara remained confident. "I am stronger than I look," she reminded him. "Always have been." The baby came in early spring, another boy they named Samuel. He was smaller than Daniel had been, but healthy, with a quiet disposition that contrasted with his boisterous older brother and sisters. Clara was 31 now, and Yates 39. They had been married for 7 years, and Clara sometimes marveled at how much had changed since that day she had stepped off the stagecoach, terrified and uncertain. The limp that had once defined her was now just part of who she was, neither hidden nor apologized for. She had earned her place here through hard work and love, and she walked through life with her head high. One evening in late summer, after the children were all asleep and the house was finally quiet, Clara and Yates sat on the porch as they had on their first night. The mountains stood dark against a sky full of stars, and the creek murmured its eternal song. "You ever regret it?" Clara asked, not for the first time over the years. "Choosing a mail-order bride, taking a chance on someone you had never met?" Yates took her hand, his thumb tracing the familiar pattern of her knuckles. "Never. Not once. You are the best decision I ever made, Clara Zimmerman, you and the life we built together. Even though I cannot dance at the town's social gatherings or run after the children when they escape the yard. You dance with me here on the porch when it is just us and the stars. And you do not need to run after the children because you taught them from the start to listen to your voice. You found your own way of doing things, and that way is just as good as anyone else's." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder, contentment settling over her like a warm blanket. "I love you, Yates, more than I ever thought it was possible to love another person. I love you too. From that first day when you stood by the stagecoach looking scared and proud and brave all at once, I knew you were someone special. The limp did not matter then, and it does not matter now. We walk through life together, remember? That is what I promised you." "And you kept your promise," Clara said softly. They sat in silence, holding hands, watching the stars wheel overhead. Inside, their children slept safely. Around them, their ranch thrived. Before them, more years stretched out, full of unknown joys and challenges, but they would face them together. The years continued their steady march. The children grew, each developing distinct personalities. Daniel became serious and responsible, a miniature version of his father. The twins were mischievous and inseparable, leading each other into and out of trouble with equal enthusiasm. Samuel remained the quiet one, happiest with a book or watching the clouds drift by. When Samuel was 3, making Clara 34 and Yates 42, they decided their family was complete. 4 healthy children, a thriving ranch, and a marriage that had only grown stronger with time. They had been blessed beyond measure. Billy married in a surprise development, bringing home a widow from Veta named Margaret with 2 children of her own. They built a larger cabin on the far side of the property, and the children all played together, creating a small community within the ranch boundaries. Clara's role evolved as the children required less constant attention. She became more involved in the business side of the ranch, negotiating prices with buyers and managing the accounts. Her sharp mind and good instincts helped them weather economic downturns that bankrupted other ranches. Yates relied on her judgment as much as she relied on his, a true partnership in every sense. On Daniel's 10th birthday, the family gathered for a celebration. The boy was growing tall and strong, and Yates presented him with his first real responsibility, a calf of his own to raise and care for. Daniel accepted the gift with solemn pride, understanding the significance. That evening, after the children were in bed and the dishes washed, Clara stepped outside and found Yates sitting on the porch steps, staring up at the mountains, thinking deep thoughts. She asked, settling beside him with only a slight hitch in her movement. Her legs still ached sometimes, especially when rain was coming, but it was part of her, and she no longer dwelled on it. Just remembering, Yates said. 10 years ago, Daniel was born. And 11 years ago, I was living here alone, eating burnt food and wondering if I would spend my whole life as a bachelor. 11 years, Clara marveled. It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Do you ever think about how different your life would have been if you had not answered that advertisement? Clara considered. Sometimes. I probably would have ended up a bitter old woman living on my aunt's charity, or perhaps a governess in someone else's home. But I try not to dwell on what might have been. This is my life, the one I chose, and I would not change a moment of it. Not even the hard parts. The first winter when you were pregnant with Daniel and so sick. Or when the twins had croup and we thought we might lose them. Not even those parts, Clara said firmly. The hard times make the good times sweeter, and we faced them together, which made all the difference. Yates put his arm around her, and she leaned into his familiar warmth. I was so afraid that first day, he admitted. When I saw you step off that stage and I realized you were in pain from the journey, and then I saw the limp. I was not afraid because of the limp itself, but because I did not know how to help. I did not want to offend you or make things worse. You were perfect, Clara assured him. Your words, about walking through life together, they meant everything to me. You saw me as a person, not just a disability. You are so much more than your leg, Clara. You always have been. You are smart and capable and strong. You are a wonderful mother and a brilliant business partner. You are my best friend and the love of my life. Tears pricked Clara's eyes. Even after all these years, he could still move her with his words. You are my hero, Yates Zimmerman, the man who gave me a chance when no one else would. I did not give you a chance. You gave me one. I am just grateful you said yes. They sat together as the stars came out, the evening air cooling around them. From inside the house, they could hear the faint sounds of the children settling in for sleep. This was their kingdom, small but perfect, built on love and trust and the willingness to take a chance on each other. The seasons continued their cycle. Summers brought long days of work. Winters brought cozy evenings by the fire. The children grew and learned and occasionally drove their parents to distraction, as children do. The ranch expanded slowly but steadily, and the Zimmerman name became respected throughout Huafano County. When Clara turned 40, Yates threw her a surprise party, inviting everyone they knew from Veta and the surrounding ranches. Clara, who had never been comfortable being the center of attention, found herself surrounded by friends and family who genuinely cared for her. Mrs. Fletcher, now quite elderly, took her aside at one point. "I knew it would work out," the old woman said with satisfaction. "That first day when Yates brought you to the hotel, I could see the quality in both of you. Good people finding each other, that is what makes a lasting marriage." "Thank you for your kindness to me then," Clara said, squeezing the woman's hand. "I was so frightened, and you made me feel welcome. We women have to stick together." Mrs. Fletcher repeated the same words she had said so many years ago. "Especially out here." Daniel was 16 now, nearly a man, working the ranch alongside his father and talking about the future. The twins were 14, beautiful and headstrong, already attracting attention from boys that made Yates grumble about getting his shotgun. Samuel was 11, still quiet but revealing a talent for drawing and art that suggested his path might lead somewhere different than ranching. One fall evening, as Clara and Yates prepared for bed, Yates said, "I have been thinking about slowing down some. Billy and Daniel can handle most of the ranch work now. Maybe we could take that trip to Denver you have always talked about, stay in a fancy hotel, see a real theater show." Clara paused in brushing her hair. "Are you feeling all right? You never want to go anywhere." "I feel fine. I just think we have worked hard for a lot of years. We deserve to enjoy the fruits of that labor a bit. Besides, I want to show you off. Let the city folks see what a beautiful, sophisticated rancher's wife looks like." Clara laughed. "Sophisticated? Me? I am a country woman through and through now." "You are extraordinary," Yates corrected. "And I want to give you things I could not give you when we first married. Nice things, experiences, memories." "You gave me everything that mattered," Clara said, setting down her brush and coming to him. "You gave me love and respect and a family. You gave me a home. What more could I possibly want? I just want to make sure you never regret choosing me, choosing this life." Clara cupped his face in her hands, looking into eyes that had grown more dear to her with each passing year. "Listen to me, Yates Zimmerman. I have never regretted a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. This life, our children, our ranch, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. I was a scared woman with a limp stepping off a stagecoach, and you saw past all my fears to the person I could be. You helped me become that person. There are no regrets, and there never will be." He kissed her then, deeply and sweetly, and they held each other in the quiet of their bedroom. Outside, the mountains stood eternal, and the stars wheeled overhead, and somewhere in the house, their children dreamed their young dreams. They did take that trip to Denver the following spring, leaving the ranch in Daniel's capable hands for a week. Clara had never stayed in a proper hotel, never seen a theatrical production, never eaten in a restaurant with white tablecloths and multiple courses. Yates delighted in her wonder at everything, and they walked the streets of Denver arm in arm, Clara's limp as much a part of their rhythm as breathing. One evening, as they strolled back to their hotel after the theater, Clara said, "This has been wonderful, but I find myself missing the ranch. Missing the children and the mountains and our porch." "Me too," Yates admitted. "Fancy is nice for a visit, but home is home." "We have built a good life," Clara said, and it was not a question. "The best life," Yates agreed. They returned to Veta to a joyous reunion with the children, and a ranch that had run smoothly in their absence. Life settled back into its comfortable patterns, and Clara found herself more grateful than ever for the ordinary blessings of each day. The years rolled on, bringing graduations and courtships and eventually weddings. Daniel married a rancher's daughter from the next valley over, and they built a house on Zimmerman land, continuing the family legacy. The twins both married as well, Emma to a teacher and Grace to a banker, and they settled in Veta. Samuel surprised everyone by going east to study art, but he came home every summer and always called the ranch his true home. Clara and Yates became grandparents, their grandchildren running wild on the ranch just as their children once had. They moved a bit slower now, their hair gray and their faces lined, but the love between them burned as bright as ever. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a grand celebration. The house was full of family and friends, of laughter and music, and an abundance of food. Clara looked around at the life they had built and felt her heart might burst with joy. Later, when the guests had gone home and the house was quiet, Clara and Yates sat on the porch in their customary spot. It was a warm August night, much like the night Clara had first arrived in Veta all those years ago. 25 years, Yates mused. Feels like both forever and no time at all. I would live them all again, Clara said. Every moment, even the difficult ones. I meant what I said that first day, Yates told her, taking her hand, about walking through life together. I just did not know how blessed I would be, making that walk with you. Clara squeezed his hand. This man who had seen past her fears and her limp to the woman she could be, who had loved her through every joy and sorrow, who had been her partner in every sense of the word. We did walk through life together, she said softly. And what a beautiful walk it has been. They sat together as the stars came out, two people who had taken a chance on each other and built something lasting and true. The mountains stood eternal around them, and the creek sang its endless song, and their family slept peacefully under the roof they had built together. As they grew older still, their children insisted they slow down even more. Daniel ran the ranch now, his own sons learning the business just as he once had. Clara and Yates moved into a smaller house Daniel built for them, cozy and comfortable with wide doorways and no stairs to challenge Clara's aging leg. They spent their days in gentle pursuits, Clara with her sewing and raiding, Yates with his carving and occasional advice for Daniel. They visited with their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, attended church on Sundays, and sat on their porch every evening without fail. Do you remember being young? Clara asked one evening when she was 68 and Yates 76. When we had all that energy and could work from sunrise to sunset. Barely, Yates said with a chuckle. These days I am tired from just thinking about work. We did good work though, Clara said. Built something lasting, 4 children all happy and settled, a ranch that is thriving, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, that is a legacy to be proud of. The best legacy is us, Yates said. The life we built together, the love we shared. That is what will outlast everything else. Clara nodded, too full of emotion to speak. Her body was old now, her leg more painful than ever, but none of that mattered. She had lived a full and rich life, had loved and been loved in return. What more could anyone ask for? Yates grew frail in his late 70s, his once strong body finally wearing down. Clara nursed him tenderly, and their children took turns sitting with them, ensuring they were never alone. One quiet morning in October, with Clara holding his hand, and their family gathered around, Yates slipped peacefully away. Clara grieved deeply but not bitterly. They had been blessed with 44 years of marriage, decades of love and partnership. She missed him terribly, missed his presence and his voice and his hand in hers, but she also felt grateful for every moment they had shared. She lived 3 more years, spending her days with her children and grandchildren, sharing stories of Yates and their life together. She made sure everyone knew how much he had loved them, how proud he had been of the family they had built. On a warm summer evening, just as the sun was setting behind the mountains she had come to love, Clara passed away peacefully in her sleep, sitting in the rocking chair Yates had made for her so many years ago. Her children found her with a slight smile on her face, and they liked to think she was walking through whatever came next with Yates by her side, just as they had walked through life together. They buried her next to Yates on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple stone that read, Clara Hartley Zimmerman, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, she walked through life with grace. The ranch continued on, passed down through generations, each one adding their own chapter to the story. But the foundation remained the same, the love between a cowboy and a mail-order bride who had taken a chance on each other, who had built a life together despite fear and uncertainty, who had walked through life side by side, their uneven steps creating a beautiful rhythm that echoed through all the years that followed. In the evenings, when the wind blew down from the mountains and stirred the grasses on the hillside where they rested, sometimes it sounded almost like voices, two people talking quietly together, sharing the comfortable silence of those who know and love each other completely. And the creek still sang its endless song, and the stars still wheeled overhead, and the mountains still stood eternal, guarding the legacy of love that Clara and Yates had built together in this wild and beautiful place. Their story became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. About how Clara arrived with a limp and fear in her heart, and how Yates looked at her and said they would walk through life together. About how they built a ranch and a family, weathered hardships and celebrated joys, and loved each other more deeply with each passing year. About how the obstacles that might have divided them became just part of their journey, nothing more and nothing less. The Zimmerman Ranch still stands today, a testament to two people who took a chance on love when the world told them to play it safe, who found in each other everything they had been searching for, and things they had not even known they needed, who proved that the best love stories are not the ones that start with perfection, but the ones that start with acceptance, with seeing the whole person and choosing to walk beside them no matter what. And in the end, that is exactly what they did. They walked through life together, through every season and every storm, through joy and sorrow, through youth and age. They walked together until their steps finally stilled, and their love became part of the land itself, woven into every stone and tree and blade of grass on the ranch they built, the home they made, the legacy they left behind. It was a good life, a full life, a life well lived and well loved. And that, after all, is the best any of us can hope for.